economics as a science. Are you there? Great. The scientific method. There are many sciences covering a wide field of knowledge. What links them all is a particular method of work or inquiry called the scientific method. The scientific method that at its most basic is relatively easy to understand. The scientific postulates a theory or model. So the scientists put forward an hypothesis that is capable of being disproved or disapproved. Okay. They then gather evidence to either support the theory or refute it. Observation of space gives evidence to support the theory that the Earth travels around the Sun. However, data refutes the idea that the Earth travels around the Sun. They will gather evidence through controlled experiments. From these, they will then accept, modify, or refute the theory. The Earth does travel around the Sun. Well, the story about economics as a science is that we call economics a science because it deals with theories and models. But before this theory is being accepted, it would have been generally, experimented, and people would have said, "Oh yes, this story or this information you are giving us, we will accept it." So before we accept it, it would have been tested or tested at the laboratory. That is economics as a science. So economics is a science because it comes with an hypothesis. These hypotheses are things that we are about to accept if evidence allows us to accept it, or we're about to refute, that means reject, if there's no evidence to back it up. So that is economics as a science. So economics as a science it comes up with hypothesis that becomes a theory, which we can also derive a model from. There's a difference between theory and model. Theory are the analysis that comes from the hypothesis that we accepted that, they are true. For the example of what they talked about here. So as soon as we accept it, so let's say a theory is your consumption is depending on your income. So what you earn determines what you consume. This is a theory. So when you look at that, my statement right now, when you look at it, it seems to be true. What we have is what we spend. So before we can consume, we would have income. Yes or no?
Yes.
So income depends on consumption. It's a theory that, based on the fact that we both think about it, it's right. So that's a theory. So as soon as it becomes a theory, we can make it to become a model. A model is an arithmetic representation of a theory. Income can be represented as Y, and consumption can be represented as C. So that means Y equals to C. That is a model. But it starts with an hypothesis, which I said is income is dependent on consumption. So based on the fact that we checked and we find out that in a real sense, what we earn determines what we consume. So it becomes a theory. Income equals to consumption. Then this theory, we can make it to become a model. So the model is arithmetic representation of that theory, which I just said. Income equals to consumption. So Y equals to C. That is economics as a science. Do you get it now? Is it clear or not?
Yes.
Great. So economics is the science. That's about that. So we go to economics, the science itself. Are you there? So they said in natural sciences such as physics or chemistry, it is relatively easy to use the scientific method. In physics, much of the work can take place in laboratories. Observations can be made with some degree of certainty. Control groups can be established. It then becomes relatively easy to accept or refute a particular hypothesis. In physics, because we have to use the lab, results will come. Blue litmus paper could turn to red or to pink with the addition of maybe acid or whatever it is. These are scientific approach that they can easily experiment. So that is science. This is much more difficult in social sciences, which economics is one of them. For social science, it's not what we could do at the lab because it involves human behavior. So this is much more difficult in social science, such as economics, sociology, politics, and anthropology. In economics, it is often not possible to set up experiments to test hypotheses or establish control groups, or conduct experiments in environments that enable one factor to be varied while other factors are kept constant. The economist has to gather data in the ordinary everyday world, where many variables are changing over any given time period. It then becomes difficult to decide whether the evidence supports or refutes particular hypothesis. So what they are saying in essence is this: economics is not science that we can easily go to the lab and experiment and get a result. Economics is a social science, which means we need to gather evidence, data, every now and then. And these data that we gather, they are bound to change for every second. So it is difficult to put them together. So that's why it's difficult to find an evidence to refute or accept an hypothesis, because the evidence you have today might have changed before tomorrow. So they were like, oh, you just said this today, but oh, you said this yesterday. Oh, today is not the same anymore. So there's dynamism when it comes to studying economics. That is the point they are making. Are you with me, please?
Yes, yes.
So go to the next paragraph here. They said, economists sometimes come to very different conclusions when considering a particular set of data, as their interpretation may vary. So that is the point about economics, the interpretation. The interpretation. So he said economists sometimes come to very different conclusions when considering a particular set of data, as the interpretations may vary. For example, an unemployment rate of 6% in one area of a country compared to a national average of 3% may indicate a failure of government policy to help this area. Others may conclude that policy had been a success, as unemployment may have been far greater without the use of policy. So two things that have happened here in the same country. Unemployment rate, as here they said, unemployment rate is just 6%. You get it, but unemployment rate in an area in a country is 6%, but nationally unemployment rate is average 3%. So in the country, unemployment rate is 3%, but in one area, unemployment rate is 6%. So when you look at it, so we can have different interpretation to it. For me, I might say unemployment rate in that country has fallen. But to you, you might say unemployment rate in that country is not falling because certain area in that country is having a higher percentage of unemployment rate. Do you get it? So there's government policy here. Government policy, one of government macroeconomic objective is to reduce unemployment as much as possible. So an unemployment rate of 3% in a whole country is far better. It's good. But in that country, there's an area in that country that has 6% increase, 6% interest, 6% unemployment rate, which is high in that area. But that is just an area. So we have different interpretation to it. Some people would say the government policy about unemployment has failed in that country because based on that area. But some would say no. In as much as the unemployment rate is 3% in the whole population, the government has really tried. So because they are qualitative information, we have different interpretation to them. It is based on opinion. So that's why in economics there's always dynamism. So we have different interpretation. So that is the point here. Unemployment in that country, when you look at the country, it has reduced. But when you look at certain area in that country, you will say there's high unemployment in that country. That is the point they are making. Do you get economics here there?
Yeah.
So it is sometimes argued that economics cannot be a science because it studies human behavior, and human behavior cannot be reduced to scientific laws. There is an element of truth to this. It is very difficult to understand and predict the behavior of individuals. I told you already, there's always dynamism. People are unpredictable. So you might come up with an attitude today, tomorrow it changes. So economics is human beings are not what we can put to the lab and make them act in certain way. They are not chemicals. So that means we are unpredictable because it's human behavior. However, nearly all economics is based on the study of the behaviors of groups or of individuals. The behavior of groups is often far more predictable than that of individuals. Moreover, we tend to judge a science on its ability to establish laws that are certain observations of space. Nonetheless, even in a hard science such as physics, it has become established that some laws can only be stated in terms of probabilities. In economics, much analysis is described using terms such as it is likely, that there's always assumption in economics. So, what they are trying to say basically is that in economics, we cannot easily agree to put things the way they are. We have to use likely. So there's always a form of predictability. So it is likely to happen. We assume it's going to happen. Even in science, we are saying that in science these days, there's also some form of predictability. So we predict. But to have a better view of what our predictions are, we use group instead of individuals. Individuals are difficult to observe, but you can generalize groups. So putting them in a group, you could say, oh, grade 11 students, these are what they are. So you can easily generalize grade 11 students. So you can pinpoint certain attitudes that will make them to look the same. But it is difficult to do that when it comes to individual. So with group, you can easily predict, but with individuals, it is difficult. That is what economics
Yes,
is
sir.
about social science. Is economics and social science clear now? So economics is a social science because it studies human behavior in relationship between ends and scarce means that have alternative uses. So economics is a social science because it is difficult for us to predict how people behave at every point in time, at any point in time. Any question about that?
So you're saying that economics is more theoretical than factual.
Well, when it's more theoretical than factual, I wouldn't say it is more theoretical than factual, but because whatever we have to, whatever we have to put out there, there's always going to be a possibility of, there's going to be iota of truth. So if it's theoretical, it has to be theoretical and it has to be practical. It has to be both, because we cannot. It's just like, but most of the time when we look at, we, there's assumption. Let me put it this way: there's always an assumption. So let's talk about demand and price. The demand and price. So if price increases, demand might fall. If price falls, demand increases. So it has to be in real life. We wouldn't talk about demand and price increasing. We wouldn't be talking about inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded without it being impractical. So because we have find out that in real life, when prices reduces, consumers tend to buy more. That is why we brought up a theory that, so we brought up a theory for it. So economics is both practical and factual. So it has to go with both of them. But most of the time when we have to talk about them, we put some as constant, we put some as variable to simplify things. Do you get it?
Yes.
So when we make assumptions, we are making assumptions to be on the safe side. For us to be able to say, okay, oh, whatever, oh, Mr. Latif, you said this. Yes, I said it, but I said assuming. I assumed. So most of the time, we put some on hold, while others will float. These ones will float, while others will be on hold. That is how economists try to strike a balance between the real life thing and predictable things. So it is both factual and theoretical.
Yeah.
Is it clear?
That's clear.
So go to theories and models. Are you there?
Yes.
Theories and models. The term theory and model are often used to mean the same thing. There is no exact distinction to be made between the two. However, an economic theory is generally expressed in looser terms than a model. For instance, consumption is dependent upon income might be an economic theory. Theories can be expressed in words. Economic models, because they require greater precision in their specification, are often expressed in mathematical terms, like I told you earlier. Theory and models simply means the same. But because you have to be precise when you are dealing with model, because it involves arithmetic representation. So that's why models could be different from theory, but they simply mean the same thing. So you can, like based on what they said consumption, they said, where is it? They said consumption is dependent upon income. Consumption is dependent upon income. So it means whatever we consume has to be based on whatever we have as individuals. Our income, that's the amount of money we earn, will determine what we consume. So this is a theory, but we can represent it arithmetically with model, which is C equals to Y. Do you understand?
Yes,
So,
sir.
but when you look at them, both of them are talking about the same thing. So both theory and models are the same, but models are more precise. That's why they are represented arithmetically. I think the point is clear there.
Yes, sir.
So you understand the difference between theories and models now. Good. So now we go to the purpose of modeling. Why are the theories and models so useful in science? The universe is complex. There's an infinite numbers of interactions happening at any moment in time. Somehow, we all have to make sense of what is going on. For instance, we assume that if we put our hand into a flame, we will get burned. If we see a large hole in the ground in front of us, we assume that we will fall into it if we carry on walking on that direction. One of the reasons we construct theories or models is because we want to know why something is as it is. So we construct theories and models because we want to understand why this thing is the way it is, just based on consumption and income. So there's consumption, there's income. We understood that they are both linked together. So why are they linked together? We have to construct a model. So we see C equals to T. So C is consumption. Well, C equals to Y. C is consumption. Y equals to income. So based on that, we understood that C will always be C, Y will always be Y, but they have they have a relationship. So that's why we construct modeling. So that's the first purpose. Some people are fascinated by questions such as why do we fall downwards or not upwards, or why can birds fly? More importantly, we use theories and models all the time in deciding how to act. We keep away from fires to prevent getting burned. We avoid holes in the ground because we do not want to fall. So basically, when we talk about modeling, we're simply using modeling to answer those questions of why, how. So we don't have to talk further when I tell you that consumption depends on income. So you don't have to ask me that, oh, when I tell you I don't have money, oh, I don't have money, I can't buy this. You're going to ask me why? Because I don't have money. So you wouldn't need to ask further about why I can't buy it. You would already have it in your mind that, oh, Mr. Latif is unable to buy it because he doesn't have money. Because consumption is linked with income. So the theory is there for us to stop asking the question that we constantly want to ask. So that is the purpose of modeling, to stop us from asking questions that we can easily get an answer for. Is the purpose of modeling clear?
Yes.
Any question about it?
No.
Okay. Simplification. Are you there?
Yes.
For simplification, one criticism made of economics is that economics theory and models are unrealistic. This is true, but it is equally true for Newton's laws too. So the story is just, so this is because any theory or model has to be simplification of reality if it is to be useful. So the point about simplification is economic theories and models, they have to be simplified if they really need to be useful. So it means don't just talk about consumption and income without simplifying it. But when I was explaining consumption and income to you, I said consumption is based on income. When I don't have, I won't be able to spend. Yes or no? So anyone that doesn't study economics will not understand consumption and income. But when I tell you that I am unable to buy because I don't have money, I have simplified consumption equals to income. Yes or no?
Yeah.
So without simplification, it becomes difficult for theories and models to be useful. You won't just go in the street and say consumption depends on income. Or you can't just go in the street and say C equals to Y. You're like, what is he saying? That's the question that they're going to ask, like, what is he saying? But when I say, oh, when I can't buy because I don't have money. Oh, it is simply clear. That is simplification. So whatever theories we have, it must be simplified so that it becomes useful. So you don't just come up with these theories and don't simplify it, because there are some people that don't understand these terminologies. So you need to simplify to make it understandable. Because if it is not understandable, whatever you have said in theory is not useful. Do you get what simplification is about?
Yes, it's the fact where you have to
Explain further.
explain in a way that everybody's gonna understand. Yes.
So it's just like taking another example, like the map of the world. So there's a map of the world so big, and you want to find Siraj in the map of the world. How do you get Siraj or this area in the map of the world? The first thing you need to do is find the map of Africa. After finding the map of Africa, try to locate Libya. Having locate Libya, locate Tripoli. That is simplification. Don't just go through the map of the world and start looking for Siraj. So that is what simplification is about. Is simplification clear now?
Yes. it's
Great.
clear.
So we'll go to assumptions and ceteris paribus. Are you there?
Yes.
So go to assumptions and ceteris paribus. All sciences make assumptions when developing models and theories. In the case of the feather and the metal ball being dropped from a tall building, both would fall at equal speed if it were assumed that there was no drag effect caused by the air. Making assumptions allows the scientists to simplify a problem to make it easier to solve. An important way in which economists simplify reality is to adopt the ceteris paribus, which means all things being equal. At that point in time, they said, for example, in demand theory, economists consider how price affects the amount demanded by buyers of a good. To isolate the price factor, they assume that all other factors that affect demand, such as income or the price of other goods, remain unchanged. Then, economists see what happens to quantify demanded to the quantity demanded as the price of the good changes. Assumptions are used to simplify situations. So, while I was discussing with you, I said there's always going to be a relationship between price and quantity demanded, right? But when we talk about demand, demand is the quantity of goods individuals are able to buy, are willing and able to buy at a given price and time. That is demand, right? Good. Your willingness and ability to buy is dependent on the price, yes or no? But it is not only price that's the factor that determines what we can consume. There are other factors that determine them. So when economists want to talk about demand and price, they will use ceteris paribus. Okay, you want to say something?
Yeah, he uses ceteris paribus, so the equation starts to make more sense.
More sense.
Yeah.
So because demand has other factors that determine it. Sometimes it's not about price. Oh, the price of this bottle might be $1 or $1 because you're in Libya. It can be $1. Okay, but if I don't have $1, will I be able to buy? It is as cheap as $1, right? But I don't even have. So it is not about how cheap or expensive the product is. So the demand for a product could also have other factors aside price. So that is what it only means now. So if I cannot afford this bottled water of $1, it means because I don't have $1. Because I don't have $1, right? Okay, great. So price is a factor that determines if I'm going to be able to buy or not. Yes or no? But now the price is cheap. Still, I cannot afford it because I don't even have the money. So that means my level of income can also determine if I can buy or not buy. So the quantity demanded does not only depend on price. It has other factors. So for economists, when they have to discuss about demand and price, they use assumption. They use ceteris paribus. So all other things being equal, like other factors that does not come with price, we call them non-pricing factors, like income, will remain constant, will not change when price is changing. So if other factors are changing, price will remain constant. So we won't use price and other factors at the same time because it becomes complex. But we want to simplify things. So to simplify things, economists will use ceteris paribus, all other things being equal. So other factors like level of income, availability of substitute goods, price of other goods, consumer taste and preference will remain the same. They would not change because price is changing at this time. And if we have to focus on other factors that will affect demand, price will remain constant. Do you get the point here?
Yes.
Okay, so that is why we use ceteris paribus. We use ceteris paribus to simplify things. Any question about ceteris paribus?
No.
Good. So we're going to positive and normative economics. Are you there?
Yes.
Positive and normative economics. Economics is concerned with two types of investigation. So investigation is about observation, finding out things, So we have the positive economics, which is a science about the subject itself. And it is concerned with finding out how economics and market actually work. So the economists, we're talking about the society, the country, how does it work with the market? With that, we have our positive statements. And when we talk about positive statements, these are statements that can be proven to be true or false. So they are statements, but in the course of saying them, we have to prove that they are true or they are false. You won't just say, yes, it is, or no, it is not. We have to prove it. These are positive statements. Is it clear? So they can be supported or refuted by evidence. For example, the statement, the Japanese economy is currently operating on its PPF, is a positive statement. Economists can search for evidence as to whether there are unemployed resources or not. So if there are large numbers of unemployed workers, then the statement is refuted. So look at the statement. They said Japan is currently operating on its PPF. If Japan is currently operating on its PPF, a PPF is a graph that shows the combination of two goods that can be produced in a given economy if all resources are fully utilized or fully employed. Now, if you are telling us that Japan is currently operating fully on its PPF, we just have to check how many are unemployed in Japan. What is the unemployment rate in Japan? So that allows us to get the figure, then we can confirm if it is true or false. This is a positive statement. Do you understand positive statement?
Yes.
Great. Then we have the normative economics. Are you there? It is concerned with value judgments. Here we're talking about you making opinion about policies. So they said it's concerned with value judgment. It deals with the study and presentation of policy prescriptions about economics. They're the normative statements. These are statements that can be supported or refuted. Ultimately, they are viewpoints about how economies and markets should work. So it's about your opinion. Oh, it should be like this. It's a normative statement. So it's based simply on people's opinion on how things should be done. So it's an opinion. Do you get the point here? So the government should increase. Now they said, okay, ultimately there are viewpoints about how. Okay, yeah, I said that. The government should increase the state pension, or manufacturing companies should invest more. These are normative statements because it involves should. It's your opinion. Clear? Is it clear, please?
Yes.
So economists tend to be interested in both positive and normative economics. They want to find out how economies work, but they also want to influence policy debates. Normative economics also typically contains positive economics within it. Take the normative statement. The government should increase the state pension. Economists putting forward this value judgment are likely to back up their opinion with positive evidence. So, most of normative statements have positive vibes in them. What I'm trying to say is that you might give opinion. You might give opinion about something. It is a normative statement. But coming up with that opinion, you might back it up with a positive statement based on what they said. They said government should increase the state pension. So if government has to increase the state pension, you can come up with a positive statement like, oh, the economy is in, or there's economic growth now, or the economy is in decline. So if the economy is in decline, that means the aggregate demand in the economy is falling. So if aggregate demand in the economy is falling, people don't have money to spend. So this could affect pensioners. So government should increase state pension. That's one point. You could also come up about saying the GDP of our country is increasing. So government has that revenue to increase state pension. So you are coming up with a positive statement, which that means, oh, state pension should increase. This is a normative statement. But you can back it up with saying the GDP of our country is increasing, which means the government has more revenue to spend. As a result, government should be able to increase state pension. So the GDP is increasing, means more revenue for the economy. Or government tax increases. Government tax has increased, which means more revenue for government. So that should increase government spending. So if government spending has to increase, government could increase it through state pension. So a positive statement coming up with a normative statement. So economists might use both together. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's about positive statement or normative statement that you can back up with a positive statement. I think it's clear. So normative statement, the last paragraph here, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Normative statements tend to contain words like should, ought. However, sometimes positive statements also contain these words. Inflation should be brought down. It's a normative statement because it is not capable of being refuted. Inflation should reach 5% by the end of the year is a positive statement at the end of the year if inflation has reached 5%. Then the statement will have been proven to be correct. So there are two statements here. The first one said inflation should be brought down. Inflation should be brought down. It's a normative statement. You don't have any reason to say that. You should have come up with a statement that allows us to know why inflation should be brought down. But the other one said inflation should have reached 5%. Because you are able to measure it, it is no more based on opinion because it involves figure, numerical value. So that means if it gets to 5%, then that statement would have become a positive statement. Do you understand positive statement, normative statement?
So what's the main difference between them?
The main difference between them is that for positive statements, they are statements that have to be backed up. They have to be backed up with evidence.
Proof, yeah.
And for normative statements, these are statements that is based on opinion. So they are value judgments, which we cannot easily accept or reject. We cannot accept them or reject them because it's your own opinion. So for us to accept it, then it has to come with a positive statement. It has to be backed up with a positive statement. Any question about it?
No.
I think that ends chapter 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.